Welcome to Shalom World Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Real Women series, where we explore the issues facing the modern day Catholic woman and how we can navigate these issues with grace and purpose. My name is Karen Doyle.
And I'm Von Hosking.
In today's conversation, we're going to be unpacking this concept of the feminine genius. And I love this word genius because when you look it up in the dictionary, it's actually defined as someone who is dazzlingly brilliant.
Yeah.
And John Paul II writes very beautifully on the vocation and the dignity of women. And he really invites us as women to discover our own unique genius. In one of his encyclicals, John Paul II says, in transforming culture so it supports life, women play a role that is unique and decisive. He says it depends on them to promote a new feminism, where they don't try and be like men, but they actually start to discover what constitutes their essential richness. And we're called to be this answer. Like he says, we are called to be an answer in culture. But my experience walking with women, and you too in sisterhood, has been that so many women actually feel that they don't have anything to offer.
Absolutely.
They feel like they're a problem, they feel like they're too much, they feel like they're not enough. And what John Paul II is inviting all women into is this discovery of what it is that you actually have to offer in the gift of your womanhood.
We're really looking forward to unpacking this topic further today with our guests.
Monica Doumit is the Director of Public Affairs and Engagement for the Catholic Archdiocese of Sydney, engaging in policy and communications for issues such as abortion, euthanasia, marriage, and religious freedom. She is an adjunct senior lecturer in law at the University of Notre Dame, Australia, and a regular columnist for the Catholic Weekly. Prior to working for the Archdiocese, Monica spent 10 years working as a corporate lawyer in Sydney and London, and holds degrees in law and medical science, a diploma in finance, and a master's in bioethics.
We welcome Monica Doumit to the studio. It's so wonderful to have you with us.
So glad to be here.
Thanks for coming and joining us.
Any excuse to hang out with you lovely ladies.
I know, it's so good. Monica, you've done so much work in the church and you've worked for the church for a number of years. Can you share a little bit about your background, both personally and professionally?
What was great about my family was it was an open house, and it would always be common to have priests over, religious sisters over. And so being part of the church and seeing a variety of vocations was always very natural for my family.
Yeah.
I studied a degree in medical science and in law, and practiced as a corporate lawyer for about 10 years, working in Sydney and in London. And then I was living in London in the middle of a really big case, and it was the middle of the night in London, and I received an email from someone in the communications department at the Archdiocese of Sydney, and it said, "Hi, we know this sounds crazy, but we think that you should quit your job as a lawyer, move back to Sydney, and come and work for the communications team."
And what did you think?
Did.
And you did. Did you think about it, or it just happened?
I thought about it a little bit, but it was funny reading the email. I knew it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I came back, I worked with the communications team for about 4 years. And then during the debate over same-sex marriage, actually, I spent some time in Canberra, working on the political side of it, doing political communications, and really enjoyed it. So I thought, that's it, I'm going to leave working for the church. I found a job in political communications and said that I was going to resign, relocate, and work in politics. And then I got invited to a meeting with the Archbishop. And
that was the end of that?
That was the end of that. He suggested that perhaps I had not discerned this matter correctly.
He got wind of it.
Invited me to pray about it again.
Yeah.
And actually created a role for me, the role that I'm in now, which I absolutely love.
And it's really suited with your gifts, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I get to do policy, a little bit of communications, campaigning, advice work, public speaking, a whole suite of things. I don't think I could have written a better job or a better life, really.
Combines all the things that you're really good at and you were already doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't believe
But
I
in
get
a job.
paid to do it.
You get paid to do it now. And also it includes a lot of the political comms and engagement stuff that you obviously found really interesting during the marriage campaign.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful that the Archbishop was so trusting and just gave me this opportunity. So
yeah. And what type of, just to go into more detail of that role in the Archdiocese, what type of issues and things are you now doing?
So, well, I started out on the same-sex marriage campaign. Yep. Unfortunately, I had to do a bit on the abuse crisis, euthanasia, abortion, religious freedom, the closure of places of worship during COVID, really all of the contentious issues. I always say that, you know, I'm out there with a cricket bat at the gates.
Yeah, in the front line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and it's great because it's part of it is advising the Archbishop and assisting with liaising with MPs and things like that, but also forming the faithful and teaching them how to get involved, how to make their voice heard, which I love as well.
Yeah. So as a woman, Monica, you are using your gifts in service and in leadership in the church. Do you feel valued in that role?
Absolutely, I feel valued in the role. I actually consider myself really blessed. The amount of encouragement that I receive, not only from the clergy who I love working alongside the clergy, but also just the lay faithful as well. From time to time, even just before I came in today, just received an email from somebody thanking me for an article or doing something like that. It's really beautiful. Yeah, I find that I'm very valued and really lucky.
It's so good because I think sometimes women can feel that they don't have a place to serve with their gifts, and particularly in the church sometimes, and we might get to that in a moment. But I think hearing your testimony too, there's so many ways in which we as women can serve and that we're called to serve. We're actually also called to occupy our position in all spheres of life, whether that's in the home, raising young children, in politics, in public sphere. We're all called to serve in a particular way that really brings out and honours, I guess, our unique genius as women. And that's really the topic for today's episode, is exploring this concept of the feminine genius and how as women we can use our gifts in service and contribution.
And Pope John Paul II, should I say, wrote extensively on this issue and in a lot of his documents on the role of women in the church and the role of women in the world, and how we have such unique gifts to offer that need to be offered. Like, we can't hide our gifts. I think so many women feel like they are a problem, they're too much, or they're not enough, where in fact we are an answer. What we can offer is an answer. In terms of all of, you know, the writings and the teachings of Pope John Paul II, are there anything that resonates with you the most?
I'd have to say his idea of complementarity.
Yeah.
The idea that men and women are different, they're equal, but that we each have unique roles. Coming from a corporate background and working in corporate law, one of the things that I always found really disappointing was being told that if I wanted to succeed, I should behave more like a man. You know, here's how you posture, here's how you have your posture like that of a man. Here's how you negotiate like a man. Here's how you write emails like a man. Here's how you present like a man. There was a book, I think, called Lean In, the idea that women would sit back at a boardroom table and men would lean in, and that's what we should do as women.
Yeah.
Similarly, in the church, you know, if you want to lead in a church, then you should be pushing for women's ordination. Actually, I think what we need to do is say, no, we can lead, but we can lead as women in the way women do, and using all of our gifts, not trying to hide them, not trying to adopt the giftedness of men. That's, I think, true feminine equality, true feminism. And that's what I love about JP2, the whole idea of new feminism. Women as women need to lead, are valued, are necessary, absolutely necessary in the world, in the church, in the home.
You've written a book about this, I'm sure. I've read it recently, on the qualities of the feminine genius or femininity, and how that is actually offered into the world.
That's right. So the genius of womanhood, my study at the John Paul II Institute really deep dived and specialised in this area of feminine genius, and the book unpacks these 4 qualities. Now, John Paul II is interesting. In his writings, he never spells out, like, these are the qualities of the feminine genius. He leaves a lot for us to discover. But he does identify, and I think we can identify 4 sort of threads, and one of those is receptivity. And I know you have done a little bit in this area. Would you share with us a little bit about that quality of receptivity?
My favourite quote in Scripture is Matthew 10:8, and Jesus says to the disciples, "Freely you have received, freely give." And for me, that's what receptivity is. The idea is that we're receiving from God initially and ultimately, but not only for ourselves, but we receive in order that we can give. And I think women are just incredible at just giving of themselves. And so that's really, for me, the heart of receptivity is receiving from God and then giving to others.
Yeah. And so often people see this receptivity as a passive state. Like I've known women who criticise this notion of receptivity, saying it's passive. But we just look to Mary, like it's an active receptivity, isn't it? Like it's an active yes to the Lord and to receive from him.
Absolutely. One of my favourite quotes from St. Augustine, I think he said something like, "Mary conceived Jesus in her heart before conceiving him in the flesh." And so that she was already used to receiving from God, a woman of prayer. And then she receives Christ into her womb, and what does she do? Straight away out the door to go to greet Elizabeth. Receive in order to give to others, to go to others. And that's something so feminine. That's what we do. We receive, and then we receive other people as well. We receive their joys and their sorrows and everything in between. We receive people into our homes, into our hearts. There's a real and that's active. You both would know how active it is to receive people in hospitality into your home, to receive them when they're talking about their burdens and sharing their lives and things like that. There's nothing passive about that.
No,
it's a real reception.
Yeah, it's a really conscious act too. Like to be able to receive well, to use these gifts in a way that actually it changes people's lives, like in terms of hospitality, taking people into your home, hosting people, that it shows so much love to people.
Well, it shows them they're known, seen and loved.
Yeah.
And I think that is a beautiful aspect of receptivity. But I think, there's so much that can shut our hearts down as women, pain, disappointment. We've explored a lot of these and we will be in these series. But so what can women do, I guess, Monica, to prevent their hearts from becoming hardened? Like Proverbs says, out of your heart all the issues of life will flow. And we can only give when we're emptied of self and filled of the Lord. But life has a way of robbing, I guess, us of receptivity. How can women keep their hearts open in the challenges of life?
It is difficult. But, I read somewhere something like women have on average 8 extremely self-critical thoughts every day.
Wow.
So I think the first thing that we need to do is actually just receive ourselves and see ourselves as a gift. And in that, receive the love of God and really be convinced of his love for us as we are, not as the person we want to be, as the person we're comparing ourselves to, but we actually really need to dive deeply into his love for us. I think that really that's the first and the only way. But I also think we need other women.
Absolutely.
I would never say to another woman the things that I would say to myself.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the way we see other women is very much different often to the way that I see myself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And so I think surrounding yourself with good women who actually build you up.
yeah.
And look, sometimes we struggle at that and sometimes we can get competitive with other women, but I think that that's really destructive. I think women have such a power to be there for other women and to build them up. And I think that that's a really important aspect as well.
Yeah, so good.
And the other one that I know is amongst these qualities is sensitivity. Now, sensitivity is something that in the world is not glorified at all.
Yeah,
It's seen it as a weakness. Yeah. It's seen as something that we want to hide. We don't want to be a sensitive person. But in fact, it's such a gift to offer. It can change the human person. It can change humanity. With this quality of sensitivity. How do you see that in the way that women can work in the workplace, in the way they live their lives, but particularly also within the church?
So firstly, in the workplace, I think that sometimes there can be real lack of sensitivity because people are often and unfortunately just out there to get ahead. I think the difference that a woman with a sensitive heart can make in a workplace is just extraordinary. To have the confidence that there's someone there who is sensitive to what's going on in your life, who is willing to protect you, to assist you, and all of those things can make such a difference.
Yeah.
And look, I think in the church, the sensitivity of women is a really nice balance to the role of the clergy in particular. Often we hear that the leadership of the church is all male, and in terms of ordination, obviously that's true. But women really do need to have their voices in there to bring sensitivity in. And I laugh and say sometimes even communication style can be very, very male within chanceries and everything like that. And so sometimes you actually just need
a woman's touch.
A woman's touch. How about I read over that email before you send it?
Right.
And that's what John Paul II's talking about when he says it's the humanising touch, and it's very much that sensitivity, and it's very beautiful. And I think it arises too from our biology. Like Edith Stein, John Paul II built a lot of his work upon Edith Stein and her theology of womanhood. Like she developed this theology that said that a lot of our qualities arise from the fact that we're actually able to carry, house, bear, nurture new life. Yeah. And whether or not we go on to bear biological children or not, this actually structures our personality in a unique way, in a way that lends us to this sensitivity to see the human person and respond in love. I think that's one of the beautiful aspects. There's also like the redeemed and the unredeemed side of sensitivity. So it can lead into things like neurosis and,
of course,
indulging emotions and all of that sort of thing. Yeah.
We're going to turn now to the last segment of this episode, the burning questions, where we're going to be asking Monica some really topical questions that we know you will have about this issue. So we want the first thing you think about with these questions, all right? The first one, how do women play a vital role in the flourishing of the world?
I think unconditional love for women, or from women, is really an answer to cancel culture.
What qualities of womanhood are most needed in our world today?
Generosity, I think, is really needed because it's an answer to selfishness and self-interest and the individualistic culture that keeps being promoted.
Yes.
What are some of the limiting beliefs that women have and carry around, I guess, their gifts and their genius?
That only if we were a little bit better, then we would be worth loving. Only if we were a little bit thinner, taller, smarter, photogenic, whatever it is, just me, but just a little bit better. I think actually we are loved as we are right now. And I think that's the answer to the limiting beliefs that we have.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Monica, the church is often criticised for undermining the role of women. What's your take on that?
The church does the complete opposite of that. It is the church who upholds the dignity and the importance and the value of women as women. Society rejects the fullness of womanhood. It says that in order to be a successful woman, in order to be an acceptable woman, you have to fit a certain criteria, physically, academically, all of those things, professionally. The church actually says, no, women have a place everywhere. Women in the domestic church, in the home, women in the church, women in the world. And the church tells women that they don't have to choose between their life and their vocation as mothers. They can do both. Yeah. It is the church that always and everywhere upholds the dignity of women.
Absolutely. Okay, final question here is my body, my choice. What's your take on that?
Again, I just think that it's a rejection of who women are. The whole thing that makes women beautiful, that makes women who they are, is this gift of self. This idea that actually physically, emotionally, spiritually, everything, my body, my entire being is a gift for others and is of service to others. And the women who I know who live that self-gift are the most joyful, most loving, most loved women who I've ever encountered, and free women Whereas the whole my body, my choice thing enslaves women. It enslaves women into a selfishness and a turning in on themselves. So I would say, look, I understand it, but trust me, try the other way, and you will find joy and peace and true freedom.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks again, Monica.
Thanks, Monica. This topic of the feminine genius goes to the crux of who we are as women. The fact that you are female is no accident. Our femininity is a gift and something that God delights in, and He wants to be expressed through the way that we live our life.
Absolutely. And we really hope and pray that in this episode, there's been some seeds sown in your life that you can take away and nurture and water so that you can grow into the fullness of who God has created you to be as a woman of God. We hope you enjoyed this episode. It's been wonderful to have you with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next time on Real Women.
Thank you for joining us today. To get the latest updates, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Shalom World Podcasts. Love this episode? We want to hear from you. Send us your feedback to podcast@shalomworld.org. With your support, we can keep sharing the Word of God with listeners across the globe. shalomworld.org/donate. For more information on Shalom World, our ministry, and our podcasts, visit shalomworld.org. We'll see you right back here next week. This podcast is available on all online platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and others.